GM, KEP Posse. It's Sunday. We made it. We made it through the weekend, almost. Sunday shows, watch party. We're doing it again because misery loves company. And I'm here at the headquarters for the Rural Rapid Response Network, Kianga Ellis Projects. And we're going to watch the Sunday shows, and I enjoy having you watch them with me. It lessens the agony of being informed, and it makes it also quite a bit more fun. I thought maybe what we should do is have a hashtag, like very old school. I know hashtags are kind of persona non grata now on X, but I don't know, the old school hashtags back in the day were this just tremendous innovation for finding people on the early social web, on early Twitter, when I used to do a lot of in-person event art-driven experimental stuff back around 2009, 2010. And the hashtags were how all the people tuning in to something that was happening live on the internet, or people who were in a particular event space but were participating online, everybody was able to communicate. So I am proposing that we use, let's see, KEPSS. I'll put it in the chat. Hashtag KEPSS, Kianga Ellis Projects Sunday Shows. So if you are wanting to comment on what we're going to watch, what I'm saying, obviously there's the chat. And if you're, this doesn't work if you're on YouTube or Rumble, obviously. But if you're watching on X and you have something you want to share, use the hashtag. Use the hashtag, and I will keep up with the hashtag. If any of you all are going to use it, use it. And then also we'll have a nice record after, because the thing also about the chat is that it disappears after the live stream. And so, we don't have really a record. I don't know if there's a way I could save the chat, but let's try that. We'll try that going forward. The hashtag KEPSS, Kianga Ellis Projects Sunday Shows Watch Party. So it's opposition research. The weekend. But we're really here to watch State of the Union on CNN and then Meet the Press. And then after that, we like to check in on the second half of CNBC, Face the Nation, and then maybe, Fox. The better, I find that the better programming on Fox for Sunday political shows is in the afternoon. That's when, although I'm always watching these networks in the morning, so I'm not sure what the morning programming is like, but in the afternoon from like 2 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m., there are also a lot of officials who are interesting to hear from that attend Fox News. And so, we want to be informed of all sides of the propaganda mill, all sides. So when I say MSNBC is enemy research, so is Fox News enemy research. So let's see, it's 8:49. I've been trying to make adjustments with the lighting and the connection. Everything looks better than how we kicked off last week. How many of you came to Bible study on Friday? That was different. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I need to make a second coffee. So I'm going to put the volume up on this. So far, I haven't got any copyright strikes, which I shouldn't, because this is fair use. This is what's called social art practice. Okay, so this is an artwork. You are part of a performance artwork, and our use of this broadcast is, it's fair use. It's permitted by the Constitution. I think we're still going by that, though. I'm not sure. So let me break, and I'll put the volume on, but you should get settled, get your second coffee, tea, water, whatever you need. And yeah, in 10 minutes, if I can get this coffee organized, I'll come back and chat a little bit before State of the Union. All right, so that'll be on. Sorry, but it's why you're here, right? No pain, no gain. We need to be informed, as unhappy as that makes us most of the time. Okay.
Plus, there's a cap on your out-of-pocket costs. All plans include dental, vision, and there are $0 copays for in-network preventive services. All plans also include Code 365 to manage rewards and wellness plans, and much more. Get the most for Medicare. Humana Medicare Advantage. So call a licensed Humana sales agent today to learn more and to request a free decision guide. Humana, a more human way. So congested. Just Sinex. Breathe. What is wow? Sinex. Breathe.
My generalized myasthenia gravis was unpredictable and limited what I could do, but Ultimir's is continuous symptom control with improvement in activities of daily living. It is reduced muscle weakness, and Ultimir's is the only long-acting G&G treatment with a frame of just 6 to 7 infusions per year. For a predictable routine, I can count on. Ultimir's may lower your ability to fight infections, increasing your chance of serious meningococcal and other infections, which may become life-threatening or fatal. Complete or update meningococcal vaccines at least 2 weeks before you start. If treatment is urgent, you should receive antibiotics with your vaccines. Don't start if you have a meningococcal infection. Infusion reactions may include back, belly, limb or chest pain, muscle spasms, blood pressure changes, tiredness, shaking chills, bad taste, breathing problems, or face, tongue, or throat swelling. Ultimir's is continuous symptom control. See your neurologist today. We all need fiber for our digestive health, but less than 10% of us get enough each day. Good thing Metamucil gummies are an easy way to get prebiotic plant-based fiber for the same amount of fiber as 2 cups of broccoli. Metamucil gummies, the easy way to get your daily fiber.
Stay on top of the story with ms.now, your online source for news, opinions, and the world. Visit ms.now today.
Okay. Coffee's on. 7 more minutes to go. So let me ask you, how has the weekend been? You know, the holidays is a time of celebration for some, and it is the worst, most awful time of year for others. And I am somewhere, I have a mix of those feelings about the holidays. So it was good to do Bible study on Friday. You know, we were scheduled to have our big Kianga Ellis Project, Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects fundraiser, and that is going to now happen tomorrow. Cyber Monday is probably a better time actually to do it. But after the news after the incident in Washington and the loss of our National Guard National Guard, I'm still very flustered by what's going on. Sarah, may she rest in peace, and I share with everyone's sentiments and condolences to her family and the other National Guardsman who's fighting for his life. So, you know, Friday just was not the day. I mean, Friday was a day that needed like prayer. So, and praise and worship. And I decided to just open that up and bring that into the secular world of Kianga Ellis Projects. And it probably needs to continue to stay there because other people are bringing the Bible into politics. And I don't like a lot of what I'm hearing about that. And so I feel a duty to, mix it up and say my piece. So that happened Friday, and I posted. We've posted on both Kianga Ellis and my personal handle on X at FHO Money. Some highlights from that. Of course, the recording is also, archived on the channels, YouTube, Rumble. And yeah, so, check that out. Maybe we'll do that again. All right, 4 minutes. What else can I talk about? Yeah, okay. I feel like I don't really know what's going to be covered. I mean, I sort of know what's going to be covered today. I've tried to detach as much as possible over these last few days. Take advantage of everything being quieter. But I have peaked on the news, and so I expect we're going to need to talk about Venezuela. What happened in California overnight with the children? I mean, I had nightmares about that. So I don't know if we're going to talk about that. I caught a little bit of, Hakeem Jeffries was just on the weekend, and so, they're going to be talking about the Republicans' healthcare plan, is there or lack thereof, for the extension of the Affordable Care Act subsidies, obviously Venezuela. And what broke over the weekend, the Wall Street Journal's report. I mean, they're reporting around the Ukraine-Russia negotiations and what Witkoff has been up to, and others in the Trump family and inner circle. Questions were raised about business dealings and prolonging the war to favor business interests. I don't know if that's going to come up. That's Wall Street Journal reporting. As well as, of course, this I think it was also Wall Street Journal, who talked about Pete Hegseth, like the double tap. Is that what it's being called? The very first boat strikes in Venezuela. So, I mean, just running through all of that, it gives me a knot in my stomach. But we're here to, we're here to pay attention. We're here to pay attention and let it inform our sense of patriotism and sense of resolve that each one of us is sort of just not going to be passive as all these things are bursting forth around us, right? Okay, I hear my coffee, so let me get us over to CNN. So that we don't miss the start, and I'll be right back.
10 times, with most seeing a response as
Just the plethora of big pharma commercials on network cable TV is just unbearable. So painful.
Changes or suicidal thoughts. Don't take Ingrezza if allergic. Serious side effects may include allergic reactions and sudden potentially fatal swelling in hives, sleepiness, the most common side effect, and heart rhythm problems. Know how Ingrezza affects you before operating a car, dangerous machine, or fever, stiff muscles, or problems thinking, as these might be life-threatening. Shaking, stiffness, drooling, and trouble with moving or balance may occur.
Taking control starts with asking your doctor about Ingrezza.
It's the year-end sales event with the fourth through Black Friday.
Initiating a great time to buy sequence.
Black Friday deals and gifts.
Ford SUV, Argo. Bronco Finish, Bill Wild, it's go time. Billboard Truck Trucks, Argo.
And go. But that will do. Oh, you'll see.
This is how you do Black Friday.
For a limited time, lease an Explorer for $4.99 a month for 36 months with zero down. Only at your neighborhood Ford store.
What if you could get an exclusive peek behind the curtain? You're invited to a holiday event like no other at Glen Peter Jewelers Diamond Center. Never before discounted designer jewelry, name brand watches, and so much more. Engagement rings, wedding bands, diamond and colored stone treasures, all at exclusive prices before the holiday rush. Plus, 0% financing if credit qualifies.
Sunday mornings, I have to have my second coffee from my John Dean for Senate mug. No fear, never give up. As all the politicians, well, not all, some of the politicians are leaving the burning house, John Deaton wants to run inside of the burning house. Why?
Venezuela could come
Here we
any day.
We'll be starting to stop them by the end also. That's good. Very soon.
What threat does Venezuela and its president pose to the American people? Senator Mark Kelly is my guest. Plus, illegal orders.
Oh, Mark Kelly.
The first strike that both the Trump administration says was trafficking drugs. Top lawmakers on both sides of the aisle say they'll investigate.
Oh, I'm
Senate
gonna
Armed
tweet the
Services Committee
hashtag.
member Mark Wayne Mullen is ahead. And mass explosions after the tragic shooting of 2 National Guard members, the president makes his most aggressive deportation threats yet.
We must take all necessary measures. No country can tolerate such a risk to our very survival.
Senator Amy Klobuchar weighs in, and our political panel breaks it down. Hello, Janet Max in Washington, where the state of our union is thankful but anxious. We're watching the skies over Venezuela after President Trump posted this on Truth Social yesterday. Quote, please consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety. The U.S. military has already amassed more than a dozen warships and 15,000 troops into the region. Here in the United States, President Trump is ramping up his immigration crackdown after an Afghan national who came to the U.S. legally is in custody for shooting 2 National Guard members here in Washington. One of them, 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom, died from her injuries. The other, 24-year-old Andrew Wolf, is still fighting for his life. The Trump administration is now promising to re-examine the status of many legal immigrants, including the ones from Afghanistan. Democratic Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona is now here with me. Thank you so much for being here. I do want to start with the immigration plans. He said he wants to re-examine the status of people who are in this country legally, which may include naturalized citizens, blocking migration from, quote, third world countries, pausing all asylum decisions from any country, and calling for, quote, reverse migration.
Well, I think this is consistent with what we've seen from this president to date, rounding up people in their community. He said he was going to go after drug dealers, gang members, criminals. What we've seen so far is a little bit of that and a lot of just breaking up communities, going after people like Kelly Yu, who is in an ICE detention center in Phoenix, who I visited, who is a business owner. She's got 70 employees. She fled China 20 years ago, fleeing communist China, came to this country. She is undocumented. Her mom's a U.S. citizen, her kid's a U.S. citizen, sister's a U.S. citizen. She has a deportation order. She is no threat to anybody. There are hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of these people.
But these are legal immigrants that he's talking about.
He's kicked out legal immigrants already. This is kind of more of the same from this president. When he says things like third world countries, what does he really say? I think what he's saying is he doesn't want brown people in our country. And that is disturbing and it's un-American.
The Trump administration says the man accused of the shootings of the 2 National Guard members wasn't vetted. Now, to be clear, CNN is told that that's not true. There were multiple rounds of extensive vettings. But all told, there are about 190,000 Afghans in the United States who were allowed to come after the military withdrawal. Are you confident that the process was thorough, the vetting process?
Well, I think what happened to Andrew Wolf and Sarah Beckstrom, horrific. She died. I'm praying for her family, praying for him to recover from his injuries. It is a really horrible thing. There needs to be an investigation and find out.
Yes, there
Why
does.
did this guy do this? Was he radicalized in Afghanistan or here in the United States? And if it makes sense to change some things, I think we need to do that. I used to have a commanding officer in the Navy that used to say, if you're not changing something, it's getting worse. So
the vetting system,
I think looking and changing processes is something the government should be doing in every government agency, like all the time. But this president has an immigration policy right now that is not helping our country, that is tearing communities apart. We need comprehensive immigration reform. He's kicking out people, that came here legally, that pose no threat to anybody, but go after the criminals, the drug dealers, the gang.
I just want to be clear on what you're saying. Are you saying that all 190,000 Afghans in America should be revetted at the process?
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
These are individuals that were fleeing the Taliban. Many of them worked alongside U.S. service members and provided a valuable service to the United States of America and deserve an opportunity, to resettle in our country. We're a country.
An opportunity, but with renewed vetting.
Well, people should be vetted. Hey, if you identify, a certain number of individuals that you have another question about, I think that's fine to do that. But going after a large group of people, most of which I think are just trying to live their lives, raise their families, go to work every day, the U.S. government harassing them, years later.
He's blurring a lot of
I wanna
lines
turn to the
here.
Questions around the first U.S. military strike in September on a ship that the administration says was carrying drugs. Now, sources tell CNN after the missile struck the boat, there were survivors, and that a second strike was launched to kill anyone who was left. Secretary Pete Hegseth is defending the move, saying it is lawful under both U.S. and international law. What do you think?
Well, Dan, I hope it's not true what is being reported. That would be very disturbing. I think there needs to be a inspector general investigation. Pete Hegseth, who is totally unqualified to be Secretary of Defense, he fired a bunch of the IGs within the department. That makes this more challenging. I don't have a lot of confidence that he's going to investigate that. That's why in the Armed Services Committee in the Senate and the House, we're going to have hearings. We'll have public hearings. We'll put people under oath. We need to get to the bottom of this. Hey, the U.S. military is, the most powerful and effective, military in the world. And we've got to be, precise, and we have to be operating in accordance with U.S. law and international law, always.
Based on what CNN is reporting, what the Washington Post is reporting,
Are you going to talk
do you
about
believe if there
the
was
jeopardy that he's
a
in
second
for
strike
those
to
videos
eliminate any
telling
survivors,
talking to our
constitutes
military?
a war crimes?
It seems to. If that is true, if what has been reported is accurate, I've got serious concerns about anybody in that chain of command stepping over a line that they should never step over. We are not Russia. We're not Iraq. We hold ourselves to a very high standard of professionalism, and this is where I'm really troubled about this, is because I have so much respect for people in the United States Navy. I served in the Navy for 25 years, and there is no organization more professional than Navy SEALs, and they should be revered. And that's why I say I hope what I've heard about this strike is not accurate.
You mentioned that you were a captain in the Navy. If you received that order, would you have carried it out?
No, I'm a guy who I have sunk 2 ships. I've sunk an OSA-2 missile patrol boat in Kuwait Harbor, a Palmaki troop carrier in the Persian Gulf.
We see what's going on, don't
I
we?
never, in that situation, questioned whether those strikes were
This
legal.
is so
We were
serious.
given an order
I
to
hope
do this.
everyone watching
It was
this
a time of
understands
war.
what
These
they're
were Iraqi
hearing.
ships
Do
with
you?
Iraqi
We
crew
understand what
members
we're
who posed a
hearing.
threat to the United States military, in this case, who they invaded Kuwait. We're trying to kick them out of Kuwait. This was approved by Congress. All of that, right? So, but if I was ever given an order for a second, I've had questions about the operation in general, and I've been saying this for weeks. Putting service members, like, are you stepping over a line here? Is this legal? They have tied themselves in knots trying to explain to us on the Armed Service Committee how to.
I have to pause on this because also sometimes I'm like, when I hear things that are really problematic, I just don't even want to platform it on this, watch party, because is he saying that an effective military is one where the soldiers are like doing a legal analysis of their orders? That is patently absurd. I'm a lawyer. I went to law school. The military has lawyers. What kind of military is he talking about?
That video, I don't need to tell you, sparked a lot of outrage
Got a little
from the
attention.
administration, yes. They launched an FBI investigation. Has the FBI knocked on your door yet? Have they asked?
Well, first, let me start by saying we said something very simple and non-controversial, and the President of the United States said, hang them, execute them, prosecute them. In my case, Secretary Hegseth said, prosecute him under the Uniform Code of Military Justice for, by the way, reciting the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's obviously ridiculous, but this is an attempt to silence me, to get me to not hold this administration accountable. We have a president who doesn't understand the Constitution,
Deceptive.
who installed an unqualified Secretary of Defense. I cannot think of a Secretary of Defense in the history of our country that is less qualified than Pete Hegseth. He should not be in this position. He should have been fired after Signalgate, and now he should be fired again for this.
But we,
If
the people,
this
elected a
happened,
president
so
for to
he's
be
not gonna
commander in
get it back
chief.
down. And what he is doing is sending
Is not up to this guy to decide to just veto that unilaterally. The Democrats cannot have it both ways. Either you're for our republic and our Constitution, which has a process for us to decide who is the commander in chief. There are protections for the minorities. We are not in a pure democracy, we are in a republic. And there's a way to disagree. There's a way to hold people accountable or to educate when you see a problem that doesn't violate the principles in which he claims to be operating.
say that we should be hanged. The thing we received from the FBI is more intimidation.
What did it say?
Well, it just said there was no point of contact. It had something about coming in for an interview. Yeah, and the question here should be, why did the FBI decide to do this? Or do you think maybe the president told the FBI director to go after these 6 members of Congress? So more bullying and intimidation, but Dana, I'm not backing down. These guys don't scare me. They're not serious people. I mean, the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense. Neither of them.
Senator Mark Kelly, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. And just how close is the U.S. to striking Venezuela? I'll talk to Republican Mark Wayne Mullen, Senator from Oklahoma.
All right, this is big, people. This is very difficult territory. And I guess what I want to say, we have to separate how we feel, how any one of us feels about who's in power. Because if the right thing to do depends on our personal agreement with it. I mean, there's 2 things. There's both our feels, just what we like or what we want, what makes us feel good. There's that. And then, even within that, there can be, a scientific assessment, right? Of sort of, or a legal assessment, or what have you, a constitutional assessment. And then us, little peons that are watching the shadows on the cave wall, we have we have another challenge, which is we don't really know what's real. Like, we can't take what's being shown us at face value about anything or about anyone. So there's sort of like 3, in my mind, there's 3 inquiries that we need to take on board before we, I think, just rage forward with a very clear point of view. I think it's a worthwhile exercise to just make those separations, to just sort of take a beat, say, okay, first of all, there's how I feel. And, I'm predisposed to favor the actions of somebody that I already favor, who looks like me or who aligns with me in whatever way. But then there's the second test, which is sort of objectively, from a neutral perspective, if I take my feelings out of it, you know, what view has integrity? What view has integrity, no matter who is advocating for it? And then the third thing is, all that being said, I might be looking at something that's just an entirely, like, just a whole fiction. So I might even not even be analyzing the right issues, because this could be, you know, a wag the dog scenario. And the joke's on me, right? Okay. So that's always what I'm wrestling with as I'm taking in the information the best way that I can. It's why I do watch a lot of live political, you know, hearings, talks, speeches, and I watch the whole thing so that I can both evaluate how the media and however you define the media, new media, traditional media, because I've watched the whole speech, I can then understand to what extent the reporting or the clips are faithful to what was really said. You know, it's a very time-consuming, all-consuming process, but it's necessary. It's necessary to be able to try and see through the fog. On this issue, I have a problem. And I think before this is going to come back on in 1 second, the first thing we have to do is just, the manipulation is to focus on whether what they said is accurate. Like, no, soldiers are not supposed to carry out unlawful orders. We just stated what's true. That has been the lion's share of the rebuttal, the mind control to just repeat that like, of course, your response is supposed to be like, yeah, of course we don't want the soldiers taking illegal orders, so therefore, yeah, it's totally fine. That is not the inquiry. That is not what the interrogation should be about. Let's put a pin in that.
Above and around Venezuela should be considered closed just days after threatening land action in the country, quote, very soon. Venezuelan officials were quick to push back, calling President Trump's comments a, quote, colonialist threat that constitutes an extravagant.
My screen is broken and it's flickering. So that's what that flickering is. It's my screen.
Markley Mullen of Oklahoma. Thank you so much for being here, sir. Is the president planning to attack Venezuela?
No, he's made it very clear we're not going to put troops into Venezuela. What we're trying to do is protect our own shores. We've made it very clear to Maduro and to the Venezuela people, which they're not the ones doing this. It's Maduro that's doing this, that we're not going to allow them to continue to use Venezuela as a terrorist country to ship in tons of drugs into the United States and continue to kill our brothers or sisters or friends and family on the streets of the United States. And so President Trump has tried to do this through closing down international water. They continue to ship drugs out. Now they're starting to fly them into the United States through tel numbers that are being disguised as either commercial flights or private flights. And so the president's made it very clear he's shutting down the airspace. And by the way, we gave Maduro an opportunity to leave. We said he could leave and go to Russia or could go to another country. And the Venezuela people themselves have also spoken up and said they want a new leader and restore Venezuela as the country they used to be, a very prosperous country. But Maduro has absolutely ruined that country.
Senator, I want to ask you about that, but you said no troops on the ground. What about military airstrikes inside Venezuela?
No, he has not committed that either. He is protected or protecting the United States by being very proactive. This is what peace through strength looks like. We're not going to wait until you come to us. We're going to go to you if you threaten our country. Keep in mind, this drug war that has taken place that the Biden administration turned a complete blind eye to in 2024 killed more Americans on our streets
than the entire Vietnam War has, and so or did. And so we are being very proactive by stopping them before they threaten us and threaten our shores. And I support the president what he's doing here.
Senator, I have to ask, he is clearly very concerned about Central and South American presidents allegedly trafficking drugs to the United States. So if that's the case, why is he planning to pardon the former Honduran president who was convicted by an American jury of drug trafficking, who allegedly said, this is according to testimony from his trial, he would, quote, shove the drugs right up the noses of the gringos by flooding the United States with cocaine?
Well, the particular circumstances of that I'm not quite aware of. However, I do know we're trying to build relationships with Honduras. We're trying to build relationships throughout South America and Central America because China has greatly influenced those countries in a negative way. And it's not alleged that South and Central America and Mexico is flooding our streets with drugs. We know that's where they're coming from. And so I think by building new relationships, by allowing people to have a new beginning, he's showing good faith, saying, hey, we're going to work with you as long as you work with us. The minute you want to come punch us in the face, you want to continue to send your illegal drugs to us, we're going to be very proactive against you. This is what peace through strength looks like. I'm excited that we finally have a president that's taking a strong approach.
Okay, I understand that presidential power is pretty much absolute, and I get that. But as an ally of the president, as a senator, you, I'm sure, have an opinion. Is on the one hand threatening Venezuela and Maduro, while on the Maduro, and on the other hand saying that you're going to pardon a guy who was convicted in an American justice system for doing exactly what you're saying, you know, intentionally poisoning Americans with drugs. Is that a good idea?
Well, I wasn't involved in the conversations that he had with the president of Honduras at the time. I believe there's probably a good faith that is being stretched forth here. If you saw the True Social post he put out, there was a direct message. I guarantee you the president's foreign affairs approach is one that's being very effective around the world, a lot better than the Biden administration. That's why world leaders are coming in every single day wanting to visit with the president. That's why the president is able to stop 8 foreign wars and hopefully 9 if we can hopefully negotiate a deal between Ukraine and Russia, because the world leaders respect him. And so what the president is doing is always calculated. And I haven't had a direct relation or conversation with the president about it, but I do trust his natural reaction and his approach toward foreign affairs, because we can see it's being very, very effective.
I want to turn to new details we're learning about the U.S. attacks on a suspected drug boat, which have killed dozens of people. Now, sources tell CNN that in the first strike in September, one missile disabled the ship and killed many of the crew members. But when some survived that first strike, the military launched a second strike to kill anyone who was left. And these individuals were apparently unarmed, already injured from the original attack. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, I don't know if I believe that at all, because we're doing alleged sources. Nothing has been verified by this. We do know that a survivor that did survive in later attacks was picked up by the United States Coast Guard or Navy, I'm not sure, and was sent back to his country. You guys reported on that. So I doubt very seriously that took place. And unless there was more to the story that the boat was enabled again and they were trying to run again, I don't know, but I don't think this story is accurate. And we keep talking about something that's alleged. It's alleged. It's not, nothing's been proven at all about this. No one's come out and said it was accurate. It's just somebody by an alleged source that anybody can name or make up that this supposedly took place.
Well, the Republican chairman of your committee, Armed Services, in the Senate, and the Republican chair of the House Armed Services Committee have both taken enough, see enough credence in this that they say that they are investigating in a bipartisan way, which we haven't seen a lot of in this administration so far.
So is her point that because people are investigating it, it's true? Do you see? I mean, a lot of what they do is subliminal. It's to manipulate your assessment without them coming right out and saying what it is that they're, you know, where they're leading you in terms of belief.
Specifically named this particular situation.
Okay, but
So, and they did the same thing.
as part of that broad oversight process. And if they do find that the defense secretary gave an order to eliminate people who were already injured on a boat, which a lot of legal experts say is illegal. Mark Kelly was just here and he said it's potentially a war crime. Should Pete Hegseth face consequences?
Mark Kelly's now our president and Chief Justice of the
Listen,
Supreme
you're
Court
once again
and
making
International
assumptions
Court.
That's not even kind of accurate, I don't believe. All we're doing is talking about an assumption. This hasn't been proven. It hasn't been said it was actually true. And as far as Mark Kelly, what he says, Mark Kelly is saying the most ridiculous things I've ever heard right now. He's encouraging men and women in uniform to question the orders of superior officers. He just got it saying that the president was racist because he doesn't like brown people. Yet I sit in front of you as a Cherokee Indian, and I'm very close friends with the president. It's ridiculous what Mark Kelly is doing. He's losing credibility every single day. In this particular situation you're talking about, once again, is alleged over an anonymous source, which the media is really good about always trying to name some anonymous source, and then they make a big deal about it as though it's just true.
So you just,
This is
you don't
not.
think
Is he saying he's brown people? I mean, that was funny.
We know
I'm sorry,
that
I
we
shouldn't
know
comment.
that the Navy or the Coast Guard has picked up survivors already and sent them back to the country. So now we're saying that they did it once, they didn't do it again. I don't believe this at all.
could that be because a lawyer in the Pentagon said you can't do that again, and then they didn't, then they actually listened the second time? Is that
No.
possible?
No, absolutely not. And I don't know why we're spending so much time on this. The president and the Secretary of War has been very clear they're going to use lethality against our enemies, home and abroad. This has been very clear what's going on right now, that the drug organization that is considered a terrorist organization that is flooding our streets with drugs, is killing Americans every single day, they're being proactive on it. Good on them. Are we doubting that these drug dealers are actually drug dealers? Do we think they're just out there fishing? Do we doubt that this is a terrorist organization that's killing thousands and thousands of people on our streets? What are we questioning here? These individuals don't care about the lives of our friends and families. Why do we care if we take them out in international water? It is a war because they declared war on our streets, and the president and Secretary Hegseth is doing exactly what we should be doing, being proactive against our enemies, and that's what they're doing here. And I applaud them for doing something, because the past administration did absolutely nothing, why thousands of Americans died on our streets.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that again, that it's the Republican chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Republican chair of the House Armed Services Committee to say that they want to look at the whole operation, which you just described. Thank you very much.
Operation.
Yes.
So
Senator, thank you.
what? What's her point?
Yeah,
That's our job.
It
Yeah.
is.
Oversight. There's nothing like oversight.
Absolutely. It just hasn't always been carried out in recent months. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
As President Trump further corrects immigration.
I mean, they just don't. I know. I don't even know why I let it upset me, because they don't pretend anymore. There's no such thing as. I am of a generation where at least they would pretend. They would do a better job acting as, impartial conveyors of information, news, facts to inform the public. And then, especially this program, Jake is the same as Dana, although Dana for me is easier to take. They don't even, the contempt is just like oozing out of their pores in a very partisan way. But okay, let me continue where I was going. Same. I mean, it's really the continuation of the same points in terms of the prior segment with Mark Kelly and this gentleman who, yeah, look, that was off color of me to make a crack about him saying he's brown people, pun intended, just because, yeah, look, I don't want to go there, but that's not, I don't think he and Native Americans are the subject of what's captured when people talk about brown people. Certainly the way the Democrats love to talk about black and brown, black and brown, black and brown. But anyway, that's just not for today. where I was going in talking about parsing, before coming to a conclusion, parsing 3 layers of reflection. We're in an environment where it's really too difficult to call. You can call balls and strikes, obviously, but as a citizen, as just us regular people trying to make sense of what's going on, as we're looking to navigate this for our lives, for our own safety and well-being, and then if you're politically inclined to inform your politics and therefore how you will vote, how you will engage, or if you're going to disengage, recognizing that maybe what we need is a process to coming up with our views on things, not just to react to information that's put in front of us. As I was saying last week, like a little kitten with the little balls of yarn being dangled in front of us, yanking us this way, that way, because we'll just go mad, and we're very likely to be wrong in the sense that, if we're reacting to a manipulation, if we're reacting to propaganda, if we're reacting to the spectacle, are we really advancing what's most important in terms of ourselves in our communities, and whatever role we want to play individually or collectively in this next phase of the American experiment? Are we going to have a next phase? So for me, what that looks like and where I see Kianga Ellis Projects in our circle of trust, our friend circle, thinking about, first principles, thinking about, what's a method? What is the larger structure here? And how do I interrogate that in order to evaluate what's being shown to me, what's being said to me? So I'm resisting reacting to the specific news of what is just being reported, like, rah, that's this, rah, that's that. And I'm pulling back and I'm saying, okay, and this is part of why I think Bible study is interesting to start to do, and reading the founding documents and really reviewing the history of the founding of the nation in terms of our uniqueness in history, in this progression of liberty through government order, a system. All right, we got to listen to Amy.
So, have a problem with gangs roaming the streets?
She's on every week.
Every state has a problem with crime. What the president has done here is taken a horrific crime that occurred in Washington, D.C., where one beloved Guard member is still struggling for his life, another was shot and killed, and the perpetrator, the murderer, is behind bars and being prosecuted. He took that case and then he went 2,400 miles away to Somalia and somehow indicted an entire group of people, 80,000 of them in my state, as well as later all naturalized citizens, 24 million people in the United States of America. This is what he does. And he tries to stoke division and make people hate each other. And here are the facts. In the state of Minnesota, you have a state, which he also condemned our entire state, is in the top 5 for Fortune 500 companies per capita in the country. It is a state with one of the best rates for unemployment, which of course we've been battered by the Trump tariffs and the like. But in fact, we have a strong economy in our state, and our state has a good healthcare system, which we're also struggling with because Donald Trump won't do anything to help the people of this country. And then we decided to blame the Somalian population, 80,000 of which
She's so pissed.
work in our schools, work in our airports, help take care of our seniors, and are the vast majority of which are citizens of the United States of America. That's what he did.
I do, before we move on, and want to give you a chance to respond to something else that the president said. He said that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar probably came to the U.S. illegally, mocked the hijab that she wears, and he called your governor, quote, retarded.
These words shouldn't even be repeated by anyone, much less a president of the United States. Again, he goes after people because they look different than him. He goes after our governor and uses a slur that, by the way, has now led a legislator in Indiana who has a kid with disabilities to say that he's not going to vote with him on the redistricting vote in Indiana. These are the kinds of things he does. And they try to tear people apart, but as we saw from the midterm elections, it's not working. People look at their grocery bills, they know who to blame. They don't want to see the chaos, they don't want to see the corruption. They mourn.
No, people don't know who to blame.
But they do not believe you should use it to turn away 24 million people who are already in this country, who are naturalized citizens.
I do want to turn to specifically the vetting process for the 190,000 or so Afghans who were resettled in America after the military withdrawal. You have been very focused on this issue. Just in August, you co-sponsored, along with another number of Republicans, the Fulfilling Promises to Afghan Allies Act. It would offer legal status for Afghans who were wartime allies, also enhancing how they were vetted. So my question is, if you are calling for enhanced vetting, does that mean President Trump has a point that there wasn't enough vetting?
Thanks for bringing up that bill, Dan, because I do think it's one of the solutions here. So the Afghans that came here, so many of them, we know this, helped our troops, were translators for our troops, stood and saved their lives. And there are many of our veterans who feel very strongly about this. The bill is strongly supported by the American Legion, the VFW, many veterans groups. And very conservative Republicans have supported versions of the bill in the past, including Senator Mullen was on a similar bill. Senator Lindsey Graham is on this bill. And we believe you need the widespread across the board vetting. And then that temporary status, as we've done with our Hmong allies in the past and our allies that helped us during the Vietnam War, can have a permanent status. But the across the board vetting, which involves in-person interviews, gold standard, using biometrics, but also when you do it with the group of people that came over, you can collect more information. That's why I hope this will actually be an impetus to pass our bill and put the resources into it that we need to do the vetting across the board. But what the president's been talking about, he says different things different days, is taking 24 million naturalized citizens and looking at all of them, or just deporting people with legal temporary status who are Somalians, which he said last week. So this is very different. This would be a very meticulous, detailed, across the board vetting of the people that came in.
Senator, before I let you go, in order to reopen the government last month, I guess maybe it was still this month, Democrats got a promise for a Senate vote to extend Obamacare premiums. Is that vote going to happen, and will that actually pass?
That vote will happen, and whether it will pass is in the hands of Donald Trump and the Republicans. People are seeing their health insurance premiums double or triple. We have a chance to do something. December 15th is the day, and then they're going to be double or triple for next year if this doesn't pass. Either we're going to pass this by forcing this vote, or we are going to get this on legislation, or we are going to march into the midterms and beat them despite their resistance. If they don't want to do anything about people's costs and their grocery bills and their health care and pummel them with these punishing Trump tariffs, then we will simply have to beat them in the midterms. We have no other choice. But I am hoping our Republican colleagues, President Trump seemed open to this last week, and now he seems to have put it on hold, will join us in voting to help people to afford their health insurance.
All right, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Minnesota, thank you so much for being here.
Wow, she's mad. She's trembling. Her composure.
I mean, we were just discussing, could actually do a redistricting push in a key state. My panel weighs in.
But the panel's next. But that, that's okay. I'm not critiquing her for that. I'm not critiquing her for that. Here's what I'm saying. We don't have, here's where I think we really have a problem. As citizens, what's happened over the generations, we no longer are knowledgeable or informed about our system of government. Surely it's not taught at all in schools for how many generations? I mean, I don't know. We don't have a consensus on what it is we're doing. We don't have knowledge or consensus. And of course, this is also a problem of how sprawling government has become. The number one problem we have is that the citizens are ignorant. And this is by design. So without a foundation of understanding the rules of the road, or what things mean, what things are, where the division of powers is, why we have the system we have, what checks and balances actually means, then all of us are just running around like chickens with our head cut off, and we're just led through a maze with some cheese. And the problem with that is we're just not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere. And meanwhile, over here, something else is going on that's going to define the future for us, for this nation, for the world. So in this moment, I want to stop saying that. That's overused phrasing these days. This moment. Oh my God, in this moment, here's what we need to do. Here's what's poignant about the moment. But truly, there's so much to be upset about. There's so much to condemn. There are many things that I have a problem with and sort of don't like and could get on here and talk about. But then if I just do that, I don't feel that moves the needle forward. I don't believe that is generative of a better outcome or a better future. I'm kind of taking what's unfolding as really a reflection of us. Whoever we have in office, this was really my very first instinct in 2015, 16, when Trump was talking about running, and people thought, oh, he announced, and people just thought that's absurd. Like, this is a joke. This is never going to happen. And my feeling about it at the time was, this is going to happen. This is pitch perfect for this country. And I think that has borne out, and we each should take some responsibility for the culture which produces our leaders, and whether it's however you want to carve that up. That's how I'm making sense of things. That's sort of the proactive stance that I need to take in order not to just like shut the screen and just say, I'm out, which I just don't want to do, which I sometimes every day want to do. But once you sort of, okay, let's just take a pause, let's take a beat, let's take responsibility. We could point blame, we could say that what was said was wrong, we could talk about all the things that they talk about on Sunday mornings, and what the panel will say, which is like the worst. Let's just look at what will be the outcome if we spend all of our time. I'm just going to talk over this. What will be the outcome if we spend all of our energy and time emoting and debating that? I think that's the first thing. And it ties back to what I was saying last week about quantum mechanics and this microscopic level of reality that exists in multiple states of possibility. Like all the states of possibility exist at one time. And what actually manifests is what receives attention, what you focus on. It's a sort of a scientific principle that is proven and expressed in quantum physics. So if you extrapolate from that and consider every moment of your day, everything you say, everything you read, everything you listen to, everything you like on the app, or thumbs up or thumbs down, every comment you write is a form of attention that is crystallizing and causing a manifestation, right? So one way to start to deal with all of this news and information and where we should come out with it is to say, all right, it's not how I feel about what's been said and my agony or my assessment that is the first thing that I'm going to deal with. The first thing I'm going to deal with is, like, in this segment of time, what's going to be the outcome of me reacting, me giving my energy to this? And this is partially why we're drowning in misery and darkness and evil. It's like we are also focusing on it. It's being put in front of us. It's traumatizing us, and it's hijacking our emotions, and it's hijacking our focus into the very things that we don't want. So one way to respond is to deny the clickbait, the rage bait, just withdraw our energy from that and try to create some distance to set our own agenda. So that's what we're doing with this project. And the circle of trust and the friend circle is to step aside, step away from the chaos and say, all right, what is needed? What is needed that is not specific to a particular person or a particular moment in time or one specific issue? What is needed in terms of the entire society, the system, that will bring about what it is, that we want. So if we're complaining about X or Y, we feel like we want the opposite. Like, oh, we don't like Trump saying this, or we don't like the Democrats doing that. Let's think about what we do like, what we do want, because as we're shown so much chaos and so much murder and so much war and so much worse, and we're being manipulated to vote based upon resentments and bitterness and negative stimulation, there's a vacuum. There's a vacuum in the spiritual realm of manifesting what we do want. You could take this in mystical directions, you could take it in scientific directions, you could just even look at stories in history. And with 24 hours in a day, hopefully some of that we are sleeping, some of that we are working, some of that we are eating, all of that. What happens if all of our energy is spent reacting to people who are temporary and just an endless sea of catastrophe? It's just gonna swallow us up. So the way I'm thinking about this, what I'm trying to do, and trying to do it as a group, right? Coming together as a community and forging this struggle together as a community to get informed and to share and to write and to look back at how this country formed, what were the principles, what, just have our own view from primary sources about what is constitutional. Do the work. Don't let these people tell you and lead you and shape your thinking. Discipline our own emotions, recognizing that, yeah, I come from a history, I come from an experience, a group of people, and also being mature enough to say that the stories I've been told that have shaped my view of myself in the world may not be entirely accurate. So I think this is a great challenge for people on the right side of the spectrum, those who are feel like they're awakened and truthers and conspiracy theory, whatever. However, if you're a person who feels like you know what's really going on, or you're awake, expand the lens. Expand your lens of, if you've been lied to about X, if that's your view, that X has been a deception. Maybe other things that you anchor your beliefs on, deserve also a second look. So one of the things that I see happening, especially on the right, there's a narrative that's coming out. I mean, it's been part of, what the Republican, a very cynical view of the masses that says, in order for us to get them to do what we want, we have to manipulate them with religion, with a lot of stuff. And this is being just brought to the max. And I talked about this in the Bible study on Friday, right? Muscular Christianity, and stoking a certain, image of our history in this nation and Western civilization, and all the so-called dog whistles, right? And so I think that some group of us should try to do the work of having the courage to slaughter all the sacred cows, to take the pain of questioning where we think we know it all, where we think we are righteous and correct and right. And this is an exercise of the heart. I mean, that's what I was saying on Friday, right? I was talking about the 2 commandments that Jesus points to about loving God and loving your neighbor, and everything else, all the other laws is like, they just all roll up into that, right? And that really what we need is love. All we need is love. Very corny. But even our own government and governance and the Constitution, the founding of this nation, whatever critique anyone wants to have about the people themselves and hypocrisy and this and that and all of the contradictions, what I think it'd be useful for us to get through this. Like, if we want to get through this, if we don't want to get through this, if we don't want to have a country, then fine, just be reactionary, just be in your tribe, just be angry and bitter and just, what I mean? But that's just such a miserable way to live. I really think we would rather have something we aspire to, and that one of the things that is troubling us is we don't see the morality. We kind of have abandoned, I think, in our culture, the idea that there even is such a thing, or that integrity. I see just very few examples where integrity is modeled. And unfortunately, what we're seeing, or what it looks like, is that you can't survive if you have integrity, like, or you will be murdered. That is heavy. That is really, we just can't, we have no bright future if that's this something we're going to give up, needing to have in our own lives and in the lives of people who profess to be leaders or who are appointed to leaders. We've given that up. We have. We've said that we've assumed that we just can't have that anymore, that that's like a quaint notion, morality, that even exists. Our success, if we had success, which we did have success, the likelihood of the United States of America forming, and if you study the history, what occurred was so unlikely. So unlikely. However, with all of the things about it that haunt us to this day, it's helping me to, I've just totally skipped the panel. All right, there's 4 more minutes until Meet the Press, so I'm gonna wrap up this little monologue. We don't care what the panel has to say anyway, not really. Zoom out. Since we have limited time, let's spend some of our time in our day not in this contracted state where, it's this weekend and like all this stuff is happening is very upsetting. And there's so many, our personal struggles in our lives and the fear that's coming with everything that's happening and changing. And what I'm starting to do, and what is going to be part of our inquiry with Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects, is like, oh my God, my screen went completely black. Can you still see me? Okay, looks like you can see me. I can't see me. Okay, you can still see me. Oh, technology. I'm going to switch computers because the screen is completely black. I cannot see what's going on, but I have another screen. So, all right, apparently you can still see me. So, but all right, 3 minutes. All right, I'm going to see, what's happening? What's the symbolism of, what word was I saying when the screen just went absolutely black? I was like, I'm getting to the good part. I'm getting to the good part of where we should zoom out and look at, because that is really where we are. People are leaving government. It is definitely a question as to what is happening. Speaking of Mark Kelly and these, whether we are facing sedition, like whether we are, and I think I'm sort of now all over the place, but one of the benefits of zooming out as we're trying to navigate the moment, as we're trying to navigate our time and to reflect on the founding of the country, not just reflect on, but to study it for ourselves. Read the Federalist Papers, just read about it and get a better understanding of who those people were, what their beliefs were. And then say, well, what if? So even if you don't think so, even if you're of the mindset that there was absolutely nothing wrong with what they were doing, or, whichever side of the, if you think mutiny or sedition, or you think that the conditions are right to get Trump out of office by any means necessary, the people have a right to change the government that they think is illegitimate. But let's be honest about where we're at with that. And then what would that look like from either perspective, right? So if you're evaluating what is appropriate activity for the Trump administration, do the mental experiment of like, well, okay, I don't believe this is true, but what if the assailant in DC is still working with the CIA. Like what just I'm just saying, like, what if that were true? Because we're not gonna, I mean, you know, we're not gonna make progress as the victims of all of this as citizens if we refuse to entertain possibilities. And all right, let's I'm over talking. You gotta get to meet the press.
Today on the program, a close look at American democracy. The second president, John. Today, many observers worry about the future of America.
Oh, that sounded interesting.
Democratic lawmakers encourage U.S. military members to refuse illegal orders.
Every member of the military took is loyalty to the Constitution, not to a person.
I'll talk to Senator Kelly. And case dismissed. The criminal cases against former FBI Director James Comey and
Why is he on? This is very unusual. It is very unusual to have the same person appear back to back on. I mean, I've never seen that. I think this is telling.
insight and analysis are Susan Glasser, staff writer for The New Yorker, former Democratic Congresswoman Val Demings, and Mike Dubke, former Trump White House Communications Director. Welcome to Sunday. It's Meet the Press.
From NBC
It's
News,
black.
the longest running show in television history. This is Meet the Press with Kristen Welker.
Good Sunday morning. President Trump is escalating his immigration crackdown, vowing to permanently pause migration from what he calls third world countries. It comes after this week's ambush attack on 2 National Guard members just blocks away from the White House, leaving one dead and the other still fighting for his life. The troops stationed in the nation's capital as part of Mr. Trump's federal military deployment. The shooting suspect worked alongside U.S. troops in Afghanistan, then came to the United States after America's chaotic withdrawal in 2021. The suspect was granted asylum by the Trump administration in April of this year. President Trump is now ordering all green card holders from what his administration has deemed countries of concern to be re-examined.
He went cuckoo. I mean, he went nuts.
She's so dramatic.
It happens too often with these people. You see them. But look, this is how they come in. This is how they're standing on top of each other. That's an airplane. There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out. But they go cuckoo. Something happens soon.
And joining me now is Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Secretary Noem, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Thank you so much for being here at the conclusion of just a devastating week. I do want to start with the investigation into the attack on those 2 Guards members. What is the latest you can tell us about the attack, the suspect, Ramanullah Lochinwall, and what you have learned about the motive, Madam Secretary?
Well, we know that this individual came into the country under Operation Allies Welcome and during the Biden administration and that disastrous withdrawal that we all watched unfold in 2021. He's been in this country and was in the Washington state area. We do know that we're talking to his contacts and going through information, continuing to gather that as we go forward, but we're going to use every tool at our disposal to bring him to justice and make him pay for what he has done, not just to America, but how he's devastated these families and taken the life of one of our soldiers and devastatingly injured another one that we're still praying for each and every day. My heart goes out to Andrew and Sarah's families. I can't imagine what they're going through. And President Trump is absolutely dedicated to making sure that he's bringing this individual to justice, and anyone that he would have talked to, anyone that he knows that would have known about this plan and this attack, he will absolutely bring in, and there will be consequences and they will pay.
Yeah, and our condolences to the family of the
Guards member who did pass. I do want to go back to this question, Madam Secretary. Do you know what the motive was at this point? Do you believe the suspect acted alone?
You know, we're still going through all of that information, and I'll let the FBI and DOJ reveal new information. But I will say, we believe he was radicalized since he's been here in this country. We do believe it was through connections in his home community and state, and we're going to continue to talk to those who interacted with him, who were his family members, to talk to them. So far, we've had some participation, but anyone who has information on this needs to know that we will be coming after you and we will bring you to justice. We absolutely will persecute you because we do know that we will never allow this to continue to happen in our country. Allow individuals.
I think she meant to
who
say
came to our
prosecute,
country,
or maybe she meant
that Joe
persecute.
Biden allowed to run free and loose. We are going to bring them to justice and make sure that they're returned out of this country if they aren't here for the purposes of being an American.
I want to follow up with you. I mean, you say something very notable. You say he was radicalized here. This suspect, we should note, was a member of the CIA trained strike force. According to former intelligence and military officials, he would have undergone extensive vetting during his tenure there. And afterwards, it is worth noting that Citizenship and Immigration Services, an agency which is a part of DHS, approved the suspect's asylum application in April of this year. Why did the Trump administration grant the suspect asylum in April? Did you know then that he was moving toward radicalization?
Well, Kristen, you need to remember that when this abandonment of Afghanistan happened, the Biden administration put people on airplanes, brought them to the United States without vetting them. They brought them into our country and then said they would vet them afterwards. And then at that time, to do a good job of vetting people, you need to have cooperation of that government that is from their country. You have to have a stable government that will give you information, contacts, background information, and if biometrics that you may need to identify that individual, their dates of service. All of that vetting information was collected by Joe Biden's administration that was used and in the process. So President Trump, thankfully, has completely changed that. We are now using all social media content. We're going after what they have been doing with their contacts, their biometric data information we are collecting. Now, when we vet individuals under this administration, we know who they are, why they are here, and going through that. Unfortunately, this individual, that entire process happened under Joe Biden's watch.
Well, but just to be very clear, we're going to go back to what happened on the Trump administration's watch. He was extensively vetted in order to serve alongside U.S. service members as a part of the CIA trained strike force. But in terms of what happened on the Trump administration's watch, just to be very clear, what vetting did the Trump administration do before giving this suspect asylum?
The vetting process, Kristen, happens when the person comes into the country, and Joe Biden completely did not vet any of these individuals, did not vet this individual, waited until he got into the United States, and then that application for asylum was opened under the Joe Biden administration when he was the president in the White House and allowed that to go forward with the information that they provided. That's the Biden administration's responsibility. This is the consequences of the dangerous situation he put our country in when he allowed those people to infiltrate our country during that abandonment of Afghanistan. And that's why I'm so grateful we have a president now that isn't going to allow it to happen, that he now has put in place measures under his watch of the Department of Homeland Security that we are bringing in new information on vetting, new information to use, such as what do they do on Facebook? What do they do on TikTok and other social media platforms? And who are they talking to? Who are their conversations with? And we use their biometric data information now to track to make sure they are who they say they are.
She's just like a robot. She's not having a dialogue. She's just like performing a script. See, this is why we're in such deep shit. Excuse my language. We can't get anyone to talk to us like we are sentient beings. Where is the humanity in this presentation? Where is the integrity in terms of answering the question or having talking points that are at least responsive to the questions that we have? I mean, we're not dumb. To where all she has to do is just keep saying Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. It's like, okay, well, whatever, fine, but like let's talk about some real things, because all she's doing is giving ammunition to our suspicions, or our continuing cratering of trust in institutions and in leadership, when they can't even hold a conversation that's real.
Promise to quote, permanently pause migration from all third world countries. Is the administration ending all legal immigration into the United States?
The president is absolutely determined to stop all processes at this point in time for third world countries until we can have a thorough opportunity to go through these individuals, know that they're here for the right intentions, and that they even should be in our country to begin with. He's putting Americans first, their safety first. And these third world countries don't have stable governments. They can't sustain them. They can't tell us who they are. And that's really the consequence of what we're seeing unfold with the violence on our streets, is because these countries that people have been traveling to our shores from for so many years under the Biden administration, their governments didn't tell us who they were. We don't have a proper vetting process. So that's one of the things I'm so grateful for, is that President Trump has been bold enough to say, you know what, we're going to stop. We're not going to allow this to continue until we have a process in place that ensures that it actually has integrity for people that will protect us and keep us safe.
Well, the Director of Citizenship and Immigration Services posted Friday that the agency, quote, has halted all asylum decisions until we can ensure that every alien is vetted and screened to the maximum degree possible. For people fleeing violence and persecution who were hoping for protection here in the United States, one of the hallmarks of this country, is the United States now closed to them officially?
They will be properly vetted. They will have new standards put in place, applied to them to ensure that they're here for that purpose.
When will the asylum process start
here? Until we're sure that they're going to be someone who truly deserves that program, deserves that opportunity. And under the last administration, that just wasn't happening. We had all kinds of people come in and use those programs for nefarious purposes, and it's going to stop.
Okay, when will the asylum process start again?
Well, it'll start when we know that we have dealt with the backlog that we have, Kristen. One of the things that nobody's talked about yet is that Joe Biden left us with a backlog of 1.5 million asylum cases. They allowed so many people to abuse that program that they didn't even process the paperwork. So people who maybe, as you would say, could have credibly claimed this, they weren't even getting processed for years and years because they were allowing it to be abused in such a way.
Well,
That backlog needs to be cleared up. The individuals who are here in this country on that program need to be vetted under our standards that we're implementing under President Trump to ensure that they even should be in our country. And if they're not, removed immediately.
Will you deport people with pending asylum claims, Madam Secretary?
We will if they should be, absolutely. Yes, we are going to go through every single person that has a pending asylum claim, has an asylum claim here in this country. You know, one of the requirements of asylum is that you have to come in every single year for a checkup and an interview process and a re-vetting. And that is something that we're going to expedite and happen immediately with anyone who does have that asylum claim today, and ensure that they deserve to still be in this country, that they still have the purposes for which they claimed that asylum in place, and that they're not here being radicalized and perpetuating dangerous criminal activity against our Americans.
All right, President Trump wrote on Thursday, quote, only reverse migration can fully cure this situation. On Friday, DHS posted, quote, remigration now. As you probably know, this term has been used in different situations, but included by the far right in Europe to call for the mass deportation of non-white immigrants. How specifically does the Trump administration define remigration?
Well, President Trump has been working towards cleaning up the mess that Joe Biden left us ever since he came into the White House.
How do you define that word, Secretary?
Biden left 15. Well, first of all, we have criminal illegal aliens we've been targeting since day one. We have removed millions of people.
She's not going to answer. Her answer is Biden, Biden, Biden. It does not inspire confidence. It's not persuasive.
Criminals and getting them out of our country, bringing them to justice, and then encouraging people to go home. If you're here illegally and breaking our laws, you can leave now, and you may get the opportunity to come back someday. But if you wait until we detain you, and we will deport you, and you'll never get the chance to come back to America and visit us or become a citizen. We're going to continue to do that, go after those criminals, go after those individuals that came in under programs that were broken on the Biden administration, and people who were in place and leadership in that crazy 4 worlds we lived through, the 4 years we lived through before President Trump came in. Thank God we have a president now that recognizes that letting all of these people into our country that we don't know who they are is dangerous. That we let in terrorists, we let in criminals, we let in mentally unstable people. They shouldn't be here. They're going to leave, and President Trump is going to ensure that Americans become first and the priority, and that they're going to be safe on their streets again.
Secretary Noden, let me turn to my final topic. In a filing in federal court this week, the Justice Department said that when the administration was ordered back in March to stop sending detained migrants to a mega prison in El Salvador, you personally made the final call to continue the flights anyway. Is that correct? Do you acknowledge that?
You know, we have the court filings going on and decisions that are going forward. I'll let them continue to play through that process.
But did you make that call?
With President Trump and his leadership and the decisions that we have made, and the decisions that are made on deportations, where flights go and when they go, are my decision at the Department of Homeland Security, and we will continue to do the right thing and ensure that dangerous criminals are removed.
So that you're saying that it was your decision. It sounds like the judge wanted to ensure that people were given due process. He said very clearly, quote, any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States, but those people need to be returned to the United States. However that's accomplished, I leave to you, but this is something that you need to make sure is complied with immediately. Did you defy the court's order, Madam Secretary?
No, Kristen, and that's one of the things that we continue to face across this country is activist judges who are using radical decisions that have no standing and no grounds to try to stop what President Trump is doing to protect America and to keep us safe. So we'll continue to do the right thing, continue to work and protect Americans, no matter what radical judge comes out and tries to stop us. We'll do the right thing and know that we're on the side of the law, the side of the Constitution, and the side of the American people.
All right, Secretary Noden, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, everybody. So, yeah. This is why we've got to create space to zoom out. If we're not going to get just chopped up in the politics of today, re-establishing for ourselves what is the consensus, in order to think of what is the consensus of how our system of government and laws and rules and regulations and authority, what is the legitimate way for them to function? We don't have a consensus. And surely, as you study American history over the past 250 years, it's really always been like this. There could be this tendency to think that, oh, we just went merrily along, we won the revolution, then we had a little bit of a hiccup, civil war, and then like the progress has been this linear thing, and that our divisions and our turmoil is like this is crescendo. It's kind of always been like this. And it's hard to know how different this time in history really is from the way people have felt throughout the history of this nation in terms of being, at the cliff's edge of it all collapsing. So that's kind of a comforting thought. It's like, okay, it feels really bad, really, really bad, but hey, it's not uniquely bad. we're still hanging on. We're still hanging on. So with this idea of consent, I mean, what is really a linear descent is our level of education and our consensus writ large as to what we should even be doing. Okay, Mark Kelly, we heard from him already. Let's just see how this starts.
We paused migration from all third world countries. What is your response to how President Trump is handling this?
Well, let me start by saying what happened to the two guardsmen, Andrew Wolf, Sarah Beckstrom. Horrific. And it shouldn't happen. And I'm praying for him and for her family. This is a horrible, horrible thing. And there needs to be an investigation and accountability. But when I heard the secretary say that they're going to pause immigration from third world countries, I mean, I take that as a message that they don't want brown people coming to the United States. And I find that disturbing. We are a country that has always welcomed individuals that are struggling, that are fleeing famine and violence. And it would be a fundamental change to the fabric of our nation to change that.
All right, we heard from him already this morning, and here's the problem with what we hear from our officials is just a very sanitized kind of Pollyanna soundbite that is not comprehensive in addressing the complexities of what we're dealing with. So, these sort of broad, sweeping, generic statements like we're a nation of immigrants or that's mean to discriminate against brown people. You notice he's not dealing and won't deal with the threat, the actual threat that we're under. What is its nature? And how do we do both? Like, do you hear anyone really talking about a synthesis of how we both acknowledge a problem, acknowledge a reality, and that needs to be dealt with, and also do that in a way, negotiate our response in a way that is sustainable? So this is, again, why I'm advocating for a group of us to have the courage to depersonalize, remove our emotional response to things, not take the bait, not just be quick to react, but go back and study the principles in which this republic formed. Why has it been up until this point sustainable, politically successful? With any critique or problem you may have, I think that observation is pretty non-controversial, that the United States of America for 250 years has been politically successful as a stable form of governance of populations. And so one way to untangle the fog of war, all of the propaganda, the manipulation, even of this type of interaction that we're having right now, is like, okay, what were the principles? What was it about this new form of government that allowed it to emerge in the first place, has sustained it in some form up until now? And we can form an opinion about that. then we can compare those qualities with what we see operating today. We can use that lens to critique what's happening, what seems to be happening, to inform our policy views, or to have a recommendation about alternatives. And so therefore, we're not being led astray. We're not the dog being wagged by the tail of very expertly designed frames that are leading us toward one outcome or one reaction or another. All right, what else is he saying?
Let me ask you about the substance of this video and your message in it. What specific orders do you believe President Trump made that you consider unlawful?
Oh, so this is looking forward, but let me give you a pass, an outline of things that he has said. In 2016, he said that the U.S. military will follow his illegal orders. He said something on a debate stage and was reminded that would be illegal. And he said the military will not refuse his orders, regardless of whether they're legal.
This is, again, not answering the question, right? I mean, it's just like, I'm not gonna respond to the question as to what is the current actual order that we are concerned with is illegal. Something said on a debate, the chief troll, chief troll in office, the commander-in-chief, the troll-in-chief. I mean, what are you going to take seriously? I mean, that is not even serious reason to say, oh, now we need to organize a video and speak directly to our troops and plant the suggestion that they should disrupt, or they should not operate. And I don't know, I'm not in the military, but I mean, I have enough humility to respect where is not my lane. I mean, so he's in the military, but the point being is like, this feels really dangerous to me, that you have people in government inserting themselves in the chain of command in the way that they've done it, which was intending to have an outcome that they're not admitting to. And when you try to pin them down, you get the deflection, which just continues to arouse my suspicion as to what their intentions are. And their intentions here really matter. And the question of whether there is something going on in terms of trying to sow division within our military, we are all going to regret that. Obviously, people who support Trump are very up in arms and critical. But if you think, because you oppose the Trump administration and what's happening, if you think this is a good way to deal with it, but I have to really entertain the third angle here, which is total chaos is actually the objective. Like, we just have to begin to consider that there's this third dimension of politics. I mean, I have to begin to consider, because I think a lot of you are already there, is that there's an element that is not, just trying to wrestle with improving our government and our outcomes. There's an element that's, not actually trying to save our democracy, right? I'm convinced there is an element in this country that is significant, has accumulated significant influence and power. That's like, no, we don't want this. We're just here to destroy it completely. And people are actually beginning to admit that, like, that's being admitted. And that's really scary.
Illegal.
So would you refuse these specific orders to strike drug boats if you were still in uniform?
Well, the difference between the initial strike and what is being reported, as a second strike, and those things are different. I think this administration has tied themselves in knots, the explanations that we've received on how this is all legal And I was saying weeks ago, my concern is with the service members, that we're gonna put these individuals in a really, really tough decision, in a tough place. And, you know, they may find out, you know, down the road that they did something that is illegal. It is not fair to them. That's why we need presidents and Secretary of Defense who understand the Constitution and understand the rule of law and have more respect for the Constitution and the country and service members than the wins of a president.
All right, Senator Mark Kelly.
He's advocating for a kind of anarchy. And, you know, this is why I think it's interesting to have Bible study and really talk about what the Christian teachings are and what the example of Jesus actually is. I don't want to go too far into that right now, but, you know, you can't understand the founding of the United States and its success as a totally original form of governance, of governing of the people, the Republican form of government that we have. The influence of Christian teachings, of the Bible, of the revelation of the gospel, the nature of God, the nature of man, as shown in the scriptures, is responsible for what we inherited politically from, you know, 1776. So valuing, honoring authority is the foundation of our prosperity and stability, right? A civil authority. We have a commander-in-chief who is not a soldier, right? So what does it mean to now have a former military person outside of the chain of command, Mark Kelly, saying what he's saying, asserting himself as the authority we all ought to look to, because he says that Trump and Hegseth are wrong and unqualified. Oh, this is his opinion. And he's using his position to kind of hypnotize the population, to take advantage of people's dislike, distrust, fear, anxiety, anguish, to undermine our entire system. And that is where I really, really oppose what he's doing in this whole seditious six and what they're doing. Because if you take a step back, why do those six, of all of the people in Congress, of all the people in the country, how do we decide who gets to, you know, question the commander-in-chief in the way that they are doing it? Because the way that they are doing it is they are calling into question the entire edifice. And once you do that, it's like an entire unraveling. And that's my ultimate worry right now. Oh, let's hear what Walt has to say.
He said, Governor, and get your reaction on the other side. He said hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Somali gangs are roving the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping against hope they'll be left alone. The seriously blank governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, does nothing either through fear, incompetence, or both. What is your response to President Trump, Governor?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me express my condolences to the families of the National Guardsmen. It's they're out there doing their duty. They serve us. As a commander in chief of the National Guard and someone who served, we have a responsibility to put them in a position where they're protected and they have a clear mission. And so I would express my condolences there. Look, Donald Trump insulting me is a badge of honor for me, but I think we all know, as both as an educator for a couple decades and as a parent, using that term is just so damaging. It's hurtful. We have fought 3 decades to get this out of our schools. Kids know better than to use it. But look, this is what Donald Trump has done. He's normalized this type of hateful behavior and this type of language. And mainly, look, at first, I think it's just because he's not a good human being. But secondly, to distract from his incompetency. We know we just came through a Thanksgiving where prices are up. We know people are concerned about heating their homes as we're experiencing blizzards out here at the same time he's cutting those programs. So,
because we have a process we have a process for dealing with illegal orders, right? I mean, I don't know what it is because I don't think about these things, but it's not to have this kind of campaign which threatens to unravel the thing that's responsible for our safety and our prosperity as a nation, such as it is, okay? It's why we can't obsess right now on the personalities. We cannot make our decisions based on the current personalities. We must interrogate the structure and the rules and think about process. Think about our system and structure as a kind of matrix that produces a certain outcome and a result. And so if we are unhappy with the result, if we are unhappy with the people, if we are unhappy with the process, my recommendation is not to just withdraw entirely from the political process, but we can withdraw from the day-to-day personalities of it. Say, we're not going to get anywhere being upset, bouncing back and forth between what this person's doing, what this person said, and where it's taking us. Let's, as a community, with Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects, let's zoom out and look at the edifice, look at the scaffolding, the structure. Let's form a consensus as to where we came from. We have a lot of perspective. We have 250 years that we can look at and say, all right, how did it function for the past, 2.5 centuries? Where did we go off track? What were our hopes and ambitions? And who's the we in that sentence? Of course, but there's a whole bunch of people who were here dealing with that time and the emergence of the United States as a nation. And let's look at all of it. Let's look at all of it, and then let's march through the eons and consider how we got here. And then we can maybe get ahead of the drama by setting some standards for ourselves. Like, okay, we now have a 21st century view of an 18th century moment. Here's how we evaluate what that meant at that time, within the limits and constraints of what was 1776, which many of us, I mean, unless you're a real student of history, we have no idea, just off the cuff because of an argument on Twitter. We have no idea how to really assess what was. And we ought to have the courage to not just take what's spoon-fed to us about what happened and why and what it was for and how we should respond in this moment. Let's decide for ourselves. Let's decide for ourselves. And that necessarily requires withdrawing a little bit from the day-to-day drama while we keep an eye on it. That requires, I think, getting together in small groups, absolutely IRL, like meet space, our social, making our social fabric is actually the most important thing for us as a nation to survive. But meanwhile, as we wrestle with why that's become so difficult, there's like a lot of headwinds in terms of the social fabric, the human connection that we are that's been rapidly disintegrating, especially since 2020. Meanwhile, we can use the technology to gather in smaller groups and think about the long game. Think about how to get ahead of these politics. Think about what does it mean to detach from the personalities and the mudslinging and the us versus them, the black and white thinking, white hats, black hats. You know, if you don't agree with me, you are my enemy. Because just none of that's going to serve us. I'm not even taking a moral position here of like which is the right way or wrong way. I'm just thinking about what's going to be the result of this. What's going to be the result of this if we keep making our decisions about what should happen based upon who we personally like or don't like, or what is our what's our uniform? Because I don't think anyone right now could feel, if you're rational, you don't feel super confident about your team. If you have a team, I think every team is in trouble. And I say that because there's the third team. There's a third team, which is like we're here to kill all of this. We're here to end the whole thing. So a lot of our energy spent arguing or making our points does not take into account that there's something happening in this country that is not going to be convinced by arguments. It's not here for that argument. So I believe that politically right now, some of us need to deal with that. And that should be welcome because I feel a disturbance in the force, the confidence in what we've known as our two-party system and the leadership of that, even within what MAGA how MAGA had reinvigorated politics on the right. I feel you guys, left, right, center, up, down, you're done. You're done. And that is definitely going to be the end of us. That is definitely going to be the end of us. So an alternative to just continuing to do the same thing, expect different results. I totally get it. But, you're like, I'm not voting anymore. I am registering as independent, or you are going to withdraw from this process. That is absolutely legitimate. I completely hear you. There is another option, which is to return to an earlier point in history for our country and for the world, whatever your background is, and see if we can find another, like a road not taken, right? What was the road not taken that maybe could have landed us and might still lead to a better outcome than where it feels like we're headed? Because I tell you, as I spend time on Blue Sky and on X, and as I watch and listen to and follow the propaganda and what individuals are saying, it is extraordinary that the sentiments on the right and left are exactly the same. Like, mirror. It's actually really spooky. It's spooky how identical the grievances are, but just depending on whether you're right or left, it's just like the literal exact same finger point of it's that Spider-Man meme where the Spider-Man is like pointing to the 5 other Spider-Mans. So that suggests to me that we're just hamsters on a wheel, right? We're just rats in that maze. We're just kittens with that ball of yarn. And this is going to end in disaster if that's how we're.
Caldwell's campaign for governor started not with a press conference, but with an announcement on Jimmy Kimmel's late night talk show.
Okay, let's watch this.
He's not the first politician to look for a big moment on entertainment TV. Richard Nixon did a cameo on Laugh-In in 1968. Bill Clinton brought his saxophone and sunglasses to Arsenio Hall. And independent candidate Ross Perot saved his 1992 presidential announcement for Larry King Live. The legendary host joined Meet the Press to explain why politicians kept turning to alternative media platforms.
In 1968 in Miami, I interviewed Hubert Humphrey and Richard Nixon and George Wallace. They all were running for president. They came on and took phone calls. Jimmy Carter ran in Iowa. He won by going on talk shows through Iowa. No one knew him. He went on talk shows. So talk shows is a staple in America. What's happened now is 68% of America has access to 50 channels. So we have CNN and C-SPAN, and we have news networks and local news networks, and there's daytime talk and nighttime talk and nightlines. And this gives the opportunity for the public to see more of someone. Meet the Press is now an hour. Why? The Today Show takes phone calls. Why? Because the public has more access, gets used to it, to meeting candidates. So why wouldn't a candidate who has something to say with good thoughts and approaches well with the public, why shouldn't he or she use all venues? And if one of those venues is an hour talk show that's on 151 countries and has some spice, why wouldn't you use it? I would use it if I were running.
When we come back, President Trump pushes forward. Isn't that great?
I love it. I love the throwbacks. I mean, take what he said then in 1992 and consider what we have right now. Wow. But there does come a saturation point. Yeah, I do. How do we keep up? It's driving us mad. The arms race of media and social media, and it's overwhelming. But where was I? Where did I leave off? I think I was sort of making the case that we attempt a more measured approach, a different discipline around our political thinking and activity, one that's going to, do something that's, not super sexy and fun, like go to local governance meetings, go to the city meetings, and show up and be present and learn, get informed about who's on first, who are in these various seats in our state legislatures, in our town and city legislatures. So, that is the primary activity that we're starting with in the project, is a group of us taking the effort to find a local meeting of any kind, show up virtually, and then we would write something about that. And I think it could be interesting to use this as a creative writing exercise. So it's not strictly, it's not really journalism per se, or it's not just sort of a dry reporting, but we could use those local meetings that we attend and the content and the situation and whatever's sort of coming up in them as a point of departure to then do this work that I'm suggesting, which is to zoom out, contextualize where we are with where we've been as a nation and our politics and the evolution of that, with a view toward vision. Something that we begin to articulate and formulate that we want to move into, that we can begin to champion, that's broader and bigger than the current political parties and the current people in government and governance. Now, this is very consistent. I mean, this is what citizen adjacent action looks like. So adjacent being alongside of the status quo and like whatever anyone else is doing, the regular process. I've been struck at how much of a wrestling, when you read some of the original, when you read the original texts of the framers, they were, of course, I mean, they were a very elite group of people, very well educated, very exposed. I think it's going to take nothing less than the kind of reflection, the kind of study, the kind of creativity, the imagination that we saw at the forming of the nation that will save it. But I think is also exciting about this time is that what that looks like is going to be completely different. So it doesn't mean that you have to be in 2025 from the elite in order to participate in this.
That Congresswoman Val Demings of Florida and Mike Dubke, former Trump White House Communications Director. Welcome to you all. Hope you all had a great Thanksgiving and you're not too stuffed for our conversation. Susan, let me start with you and just have you set the table here, because we are seeing President Trump really ramp up his crackdown on who can come into the country and who can stay in the country. You heard Secretary Noem say that it's possible they may deport people with pending asylum claims. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I was really struck, of course, that this is all, remember, a response to a terrible tragedy that happened here in Washington on the eve of the holiday. And, absolutely a terrible tragedy, not political in any way. And yet what we're seeing, I think, from the administration is an effort to sort of take that tragedy and now impose what, you might even call a form of collective punishment. The idea that Donald Trump over this holiday weekend is saying we're going to pause all asylum decisions, all people coming in from, quote, third world countries. I don't even know what that means, but it seems to be a response, again, to this tragic killing. So on one hand, we're still learning about the facts of this case. You spoke about that with the Secretary of Homeland Security, but then you have, what appears to be a list of policies and a sort of a wish list part of the immigration crackdown that I see the administration sort of moving to make as part of this same news cycle about this tragedy of these West Virginia National Guard officials.
Yeah, I pick up on that point because Susan speaks about this idea of collective punishment, that suddenly all Afghan nationals would be punished for the actions, the horrific actions of this one person. What are the conversations you are having inside the Republican Party about what is unfolding right now? Is there a concern that some of these actions could be going too far and could backfire?
I think there's a concern that, especially among those individuals that either served in the military in Afghanistan and really recognize that now we're painting with a broad brush these individuals that were helpful to American troops. We can't turn our backs on them. So I think that conversation's happening.
Yeah.
The bigger conversation here really, and I call it this 90, 30, and 3 problem that the president has. He's got 90% of Republicans that are still with him on immigration, the economy, almost every issue. There has been no cracks. 30% of independents and 3% of Democrats. That 30% of independents is really the number he's got to focus on. But right now with immigration, they feel comfortable with the base being with them to double down on the issue that they think is the best one for the administration to run on?
Former Congressman Jennings, you are a former Orlando police chief. You obviously have served in Congress. How do you see this, particularly as Mike lays out those different factions and the fact that the base is still with President Trump on this?
Well, let me say this, in both of those jobs, I took an oath to the Constitution. President Trump and Secretary Noem did as well. What happened to the National Guard members was a tragedy. Let's get to the bottom of it and find out how this happened so we can prevent it from happening again. But even in the light of this tragedy, the president has to follow the immigration laws that are on the book. He cannot just decide to make up laws as he goes along. That's Congress's job. I'm glad to see Congress is back at work and there. Let Congress do the work that they need to do. If changes need to be made, bring Congress into the table and let them help you make those changes.
We are seeing, Susan, oversight for the first time. It seems as though poised to be oversight on a separate issue, which is the killings of these suspected drug boat traffickers. And it comes in this revelation, the Secretary Hegseth basically gave a spoken order to kill everyone on one of these boats in September. You heard Senator Kelly respond to that and basically say, I hope that reporting is not true. But is this an inflection point where you're starting to see Congress have oversight as one of the themes of this is the president testing the limits of his authority?
Oh my goodness, Kristen, I have to say, first of all, that phrase, expecting to have oversight, what we're 9 months into the Trump administration, and one of the, I think, the signature things we've all observed about our politics not functioning in the way that we expect is Congress, Republican-led in both the House and the Senate, essentially giving Donald Trump and signing over Congress's power to the executive branch. And so, I would say to certain Democrats, especially since those election results have said, oh, maybe we're detecting some cracks in the system, Congress has not yet asserted its role and its function. I do think it's notable that you have both the House and the Senate Armed Services Committee, that's the Republican chairs and the Democrats saying they want to have hearings on this, that they want to have oversight and an investigation into what occurred. I think what I've heard from many national security veterans, I don't even know what their party is, real alarm about what has been unfolding in the Caribbean, this massive military buildup. President Trump has just declared over the weekend that Venezuelan airspace is closed, and yet you have a real question here. Is it legal? On what basis are these strikes being carried out? You've had law professors and others come out and say it's not legal, even putting aside the question of whether two people who were no longer fighting were killed.
This is one of the themes, questions about how the president's using his executive authority. He called for his political enemies, James Comey and Letitia James, to be prosecuted. Those cases were dropped against them. The administration is going to appeal, but again, it fits into this broader question about whether there are checks on his power. It seems like the courts are the front lines.
The president can only, as the executive branch, can only do what he's doing, good or bad, with Congress and the courts not doing what they're supposed to do. We have a checks and balances system. And just to listen to what you talked about killing everyone, then Secretary Hegseth wonders why 6 members of Congress felt the need to put out a video reminding service members that they cannot or should not follow illegal orders.
Mike, 10 seconds left.
We have checks and balances in the system. I think the president is going to move as far as he can, as we see with, and as far as this administration will go. That should not be, we should expect that.
All right, Mike, thank you. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for watching. We'll be back next week, because if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Yeah. My progression this year in terms of politics has definitely been that, unfortunately, even though Kianga Ellis Projects started, I mean, this 25, the rural rapid response network is, citizen adjacent action from the beginning was inspired looking at the failure of our governance, government, leadership, and wanting to be involved in something that we as ordinary people, unelected, unappointed, can do without waiting for anyone else to get their stuff together, without continuing to experience the failure, that we have to step up in our leadership as just concerned, caring people. And what that looks like is, number one, becoming knowledgeable and informed, primarily locally. And although that was always, the focus of the project, to be alongside a certain kind of civics that was about what the person in the mirror is doing to complement, the necessity of that is just been reinforced time and time again, to the point where there feels like it's like the reliance or participation in the traditional architecture might be entirely a waste of time, in the sense, I think for me it's still necessary, but for my engagement and energy to go toward validating and enforcing what's happening or what's being prescribed at the official level, no longer makes sense, because there's this cratering of legitimacy. I mean, that's been the problem, but it's not getting better. And therefore, seeing the exodus, what some people are calling an exodus in willingness to serve, the focus on what's going to come next. It feels like there's something new that has to come. And when I say that it's new, I think it's because I'm having this realization that things have changed in this country far beyond what I ever imagined. Even a year ago, when I felt compelled to do more, it's later. It's later. The hour is later than I realized. In January. It's later than I realized in June. It's later than I realized in September. And I have a feeling that some of you share that sentiment. And so I feel that I'm shifting more toward, well, what's meaningful to do is not to, as I've been saying, argue about the personalities. It's not to debate whatever is being discussed today on the Sunday shows, but we have to create an architecture, we have to create a vision, we have to reinforce the design that we could possibly enter into in the future. So we can't, it's like trying to steer, I don't know, I'm not going to come up with the right analogy, but it's like, we're so behind the eight ball. We're so behind the eight ball, and I don't think we're ever going to get out in front unless we actually get out in front, unless we pull back some of our focus and attention on the day-to-day and the who's who and who said what. And we say, okay, there are certain things that are baked in the cake. There's a certain inertia. There's a certain dominoes that are going to continue to fall. And I feel like the way we tend to react and engage in politics, even grassroots politics, even our work on campaigns, writing opinion pieces, people who are doing new media, is we're behind the dominoes, just sort of stumbling over them as they've already fallen. So the challenge then, as I see it, is to extract ourselves, zoom out, and then do some work that is potentially going to get ahead of where the dominoes are already falling, right? So I like this analogy. So you can picture a whole setup of dominoes, a whole elaborate, you've seen them where, you know, you hit the one and then it's this like very spectacular falling of ranges of dominoes up and down, you know, inclines and things like that. So I think what I'm talking about, the picture of it would be where, all right, the first domino has been hit and it's going to take off and do the whole, you know, dominoes are just falling. And if we just stay focused on each domino as it falls, you know, we're powerless. We're just going to have to take what comes. But if we could get ahead of the dominoes falling, if we could find the spot on the map or on the board and either create a gap or set up some new dominoes. I think that's the analogy. Like, let's set up some new dominoes so as the dominoes are falling, the pattern, the inevitability that is baked in the cake kind of now based on how the dominoes are laid out. You know, we can alter that. We can alter that, but only if we have the strength and the courage. And this is why we need a friend circle, because we cannot do this alone. To, yeah, detach a little bit. Decide we want to go to some primary sources. Think of this as a creative exercise and one of humility and one of love. And yeah, think about what an alternative role of the dominoes could be down the road. Let's see. I think we're going to wrap up a little bit early. I still can't see this screen. So I'm looking in the camera and the entire screen is black. Okay, let's just catch a little bit of where we are.
Enforcement in DC that the DC police and other local law enforcement agencies can do. And this demonstrates yet again something we've seen so often. Our troops, including our Guards members, they're going to serve in brave and courageous and self-sacrificing ways. And we can be so proud of them. But the orders that they get from their civilian leaders, that's where the problem comes in. Whether it's a Hegseth order to kill them all, or an order to send Guardsmen and women in a political stunt deployment to cities around the country. These two individuals should have been celebrating Thanksgiving with their families, and I just mourn for them and all who suffer as a result. The president's decision to say, okay, this particular criminal who should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, who came in under an asylum grant that President Trump and his administration decided this past summer that now we're going to pause processes or asylum from 19, quote, third world countries. You don't know which ones they are. You shouldn't paint with a broad brush. Go after a criminal to the full extent of the law, but don't say that all Afghans in the United States, those who served with our military and who lost their lives and their health and their families in many ways by doing so, don't say that they're all bad. Don't say that people who come from third world countries are bad. Virginia, about 1 out of 9 of us is an immigrant, and our immigrant communities in Virginia have been an enormous source of strength to our Commonwealth and to our country, and it's wrong to target them all for the bad actions of an individual, just like we wouldn't target other communities in the United States for the bad actions of one individual.
Something tells me this is going to be a big topic of conversation in Congress
It will.
this week. Senator Kane, I really appreciate you being with us, and happy Thanksgiving.
So glad we can do it. Thanks.
And we'll be right back.
Yeah. So it really frees us up from having to have an opinion about everything everyone's saying. We have opinions about what's happening. But let's take that passion about what's happening and think about the cause. Think about the systemic cause, the structural cause. Right? Because just to dismantle and kind of eliminate and scorch earth, yeah, there are things that need to be dismantled and stopped and all of that. But if we're not prepared with what replaces it, if we're not protective of the things that really do protect us, and our Constitution isn't just what, it doesn't say just what people want it to say to suit their power agenda or whatever's going on in this country. And if we don't know it for ourselves, away from the hype, away from how it's being, it's just being rendered almost meaningless in terms of how each position, the way it's framed in our country right now, each position is accusing the other of the other thing. And here's what's wild is like, what if they're both right?
White House National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett. Kevin, thanks so much for being with us.
Great to be here.
So we've all eaten the turkey. Holiday shopping has begun in earnest. So let's talk about what the holiday shopping season looks like. We've got new surveys from Goldman Sachs and Bank of America that paint a modest picture of the holiday spending outlook. They say low and middle income Americans are planning to pull back a little bit because they perceive that prices are higher. And they say if spending is up this year, it's going to be because goods in part are more expensive. Is this the temporary result or long-term result of the Trump tariffs?
Right. Well, what we've seen, those were reports about what people anticipated would happen over the Thanksgiving weekend, but we now have hard data for Black Friday and even for Saturday. And the online sales were up almost 10%. In-store sales were up 4%. It was really a blockbuster weekend after Thanksgiving. And so I think that the folks who are saying, wow, maybe people are going to be anxious about, going back and getting presents for the kids and so on, they've been disproven this weekend. And I think the reason is that incomes are up this year. We had a great jobs report with strong income, and the government shut down over so that people presumably have a little pent up demand as well. I think that we're looking at a great recovery from a few weeks because of the shutdown.
Sure. I'm wondering how much of that spending increase you think is attributable to the fact that prices are up. Let me give you an example. The maker of Tonka trucks said a couple days ago that a toy truck that cost $30 last year is going to cost $40 this year, partly because they lost about 8 weeks of shipping due to the U.S. trade war with China. What's your advice to holiday shoppers who don't want to spend more this year than they did last year or can't afford to spend more?
Right. Well, as you know, it depends on what you're looking at. Like egg prices are down, gasoline prices drop below $2 a gallon in a lot of places.
You mean below?
Rates are down.
Gas prices on average are still at $3 a gallon.
Yeah, that's right. For a few states, they got below $2. So the point is just that in the end, what matters is in the aggregate, the average across everything that everybody buys. And that averaged about 5% under Joe Biden and is a little bit above 2.5%, about cut in half for President Trump. And the bottom line, though, is really that wages have been growing faster than prices. And that's why real incomes this year are up by about $1,200 so far. That's why we could have a great Black Friday and a great Thanksgiving sales weekend, because people feel like they have more money in their pockets. Even though you're right, there are some things that cost more, some things that cost less. But on average, we're about half the inflation rate of Joe Biden.
Polls show that the public, despite some of the data you're presenting, is getting more skeptical. In our latest CBS News poll, 68% of Americans said they believe that President Trump's policies are pushing grocery prices up. They're up about 1.4% year to date. And economic sentiment, the number of people who think the economy is good, has actually dropped 6 points since he took office. How do you explain that?
Well, first of all, you mentioned quite accurately the 1.4% increase in grocery prices. I think that the interesting thing about that is that's way below the Fed's target of 2 for everything else, right? And so you have to concede that 1.4% is very, very low inflation. And so I think that the bottom line is that we've got the big, beautiful bill cutting taxes on overtime, taxes for tips and so on. And all that money is going to start to be in people's pockets. And that's why they're optimistic about next year. Scott Bessent said last week that he's looking at first half of next year that could be in the 4% range. And the reason is that we passed the tax cuts in July. And so they didn't have time to change all the tax forms and everything. And so people are going to get really, really big refunds in the fall as well. And so we're really optimistic. And we think that the good news around Thanksgiving is the sign of something that's even stronger to come.
You mentioned purchasing power. One thing that is going to affect purchasing power for 22 million Americans is the expiration of Obamacare premium subsidies. Last week, a funny situation, the White House floated this plan to extend the subsidies for 2 years. Then you dropped the proposal. And then the president said on Air Force One, somebody said I wanted to extend it for 2 years. I don't want to extend it for 2 years. I'd rather not extend them at all. Was this a case of the right hand not talking to the left hand?
No, I think that people were talking to each other, but what happened, as you know, as a professional journalist, is that sometimes people leak pre-decisional things that are confidential and pre-decisional, and I think that somebody did that, and then it rolled back because it hadn't been through the whole process. But President Trump has been clear that he's very concerned about the cost of healthcare, and that's why we had $50 billion for rural hospitals in the big, beautiful bill, why we tried to get $30 billion in for cost sharing, and the Democrats didn't like that. They had an alternative approach. And so I think that what we're going to see now between now and Christmas is that people are going to work this out because we have a solution. The White House has a solution for cost sharing, and the Democrats have an alternative. And people don't want for the few seniors that have really, really massive increases to see those. But don't forget that the vast majority of people in the Affordable Care Act are getting their insurance for less than $50 a month. And so while this is an issue that needs to be worked out, we don't want to cause panic for the folks who are worried that they're going to lose the thing that they have. It's really just the very, very high cost people who are closer to retirement age that have the problem.
Bloomberg is reporting, as I'm sure you know, that you are now considered the front runner to replace Fed Reserve Chair Jay Powell when his term expires in the spring. Secretary Bessent, who is heading up this search, said he was holding final interviews this week. How did yours go?
I am not sure that Bloomberg has the story right. I'm really honored to be amongst a group of really great candidates. The thing that I was most impressive about this week when that story leaked was that really, I think the news for markets was that President Trump is close to announcing a new person who's going to replace Jay Powell. And if you look at the market response to that, it was very, very positive. We had a great treasury auction, interest rates went down. And so I think that the American people could expect President Trump to pick somebody who's going to help them, have cheaper car loans and easier access to mortgages at lower rates. And that's what we saw in the market response to the rumor about me, which, is probably about as valuable as the rumor about the healthcare policy that we just talked about.
Well, I guess we'll find out if they're right sooner rather than later when we hear the president's decision. So for now, Director of the White House National Economic Council, that's your title today. Kevin Hassett, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll be back in a moment.
He has such a he's such a nice bedside manner and a very excellent suit, and that tie and the purple and the pinstripe gray flannel. Very nice. Very nice. So these shows are not holding my attention this week. So we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna wrap it up early because anyway, tomorrow is a big day. Tomorrow is the rescheduling of what we were going to do Friday. Decided to do Bible study instead. So tomorrow on Kianga Ellis live stream will be the fundraiser and a deep dive into Friends of Kianga Ellis Projects, the Rural Rapid Response Network, what is going on, what's next for 2026, what we'll be doing, what our values are, what's sort of the framework in which we see ourselves operating, the roadmap, the sequence of events and activities, and the mechanisms. So it could be long. It could be long. It'll be 2:00, and we will go through the essay. First, I got the Banny, then I got the Power, because that really articulates, I would say, both philosophy and a point of view, and particularly why we are using blockchain and Web3 architecture and tokens, and just what all of that is about within this project. We will also screen some vintage Kianga Ellis Projects stuff, and I'll leave it at that, and maybe also talk a bit about the bibliography. And yeah, so it's good. It'll be good to check out. I think I will put together a kind of program. So depending on if you're wondering like when in the stream we're going to deal with certain things, I'll try to kind of put together kind of a schedule. And yeah, Cyber Monday, we'll be back. I'll be back live and go on more of what I've gone on, which I don't know if I was very articulate. I was very articulate. I don't plan what I'm going to say on these things. I just press go live and I just talk to you all what's on my mind and what's on my heart. So it is what it is. And I will review today's broadcast as I do, and hope there's some things that made some sense. And we'll, of course, also on the socials share some of the highlights. And yeah, just get ready for the week. Get ready for another week in the arena. So I want to thank you for joining me again for the Kianga Ellis Projects Sunday Shows Watch Party. This is the official end. I can't see any of my screen, so I am going to have to try to get the screen to come on so I can stop the live stream. So from this point on, yeah, you're going to see me fumbling because I'm still recording even though I can't see it. I'm looking at another machine I have over here, so I'm seeing myself over there. But it's over. So the broadcast is over, and now I'm going to try to figure out how to turn it off. So thanks for streaming with me, and it's a mess. It's just a hot mess, but we're gonna be okay. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna do our part. Citizen adjacent action. We're gonna have a friend. We're gonna have a circle of trust. We're gonna have friends. We're gonna do it together. It's gonna make it fun. It's gonna make it easy. It might make it sustainable. I hate that word, but that is why we have to deal with Web3, because we need an extra piece to this. We need something new. We need a magic wand of some kind to navigate what we're up against, which is a lot. But I believe the outcome is certain, and that the future for us as a people in this nation is still bright. But it's going to mean that we roll up our sleeves. The leaders need our help. We're here to save the day. Bye bye. I'll see you all tomorrow, 2 p.m. for, it's going to be like telethon style. It might just go for until we have an ambitious goal, like a ridiculous ambitious goal. So hey, why not? Shoot your shot, they say. So we're gonna do it tomorrow. So see you hopefully tomorrow. Bye. Haha. I can see my screen. So I'm gonna stop the stream now.